There was a tooth in the freezer. Front molar, clean, no blood. Sitting inside a small Ziploc bag between a box of Eggo waffles and half a bag of peas. I found it while looking for ice cream. I stared at it for a long time. Not because of what it was, but because of what it wasn't. It wasn't surprising. Not anymore. That's what it's like when your marriage is quietly rotting from the inside. Nothing shocks you. Not even freezer teeth. I sat down on the cold kitchen floor with the bag in my hand. The tile was freezing through my sweatpants. The clock on the microwave blinked 3:14 a.m., blinking like it had something important to say. The house was silent, except for the sound of her laughter. From the basement. Muted. Soft. Not for me. Locked with key, locked doors, unlocked phones. The door to the basement was locked. She said she needed space. Space to reclaim her identity. That meant Wednesday nights downstairs. Incense, wine, music, and apparently, laughing into the void. I used to be curious. Used to knock. Asked to join. But every time, I was met with the same phrase. Not today. No anger. No warmth. Just air. Words that slid off her tongue like she'd practiced them in the mirror. Not today. Not now. Not ever. If she had her way. Brain the mind games. Let me tell you something no one prepares you for. It's not the cheating that breaks you. It's the gaslighting so casual it feels like jazz. I once told her I felt lonely, and she blinked twice and said, "You're addicted to sadness." I once asked if she loved me, and she said, "You don't love yourself, so how could you ever understand my love?" I once asked who Brent from Pilates was, and she laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Do you even hear yourself?" That one stayed with me. Because yes, I did hear myself. And I sounded like a man no longer sure what's real. Memo I filed on a Tuesday. It wasn't planned. It wasn't bold. I was literally at the post office to return a broken phone charger. Then I saw the family law packets in a plastic stand near the entrance. Bright yellow. Like a warning. I picked one up. Just to look. Just to see. The clerk didn't ask. He just nodded like he'd seen this movie 100 times before. And I filled it out in the parking lot. Right there, in my car. Knees under the steering wheel. Hands shaking like I was stealing something sacred. Telephone receiver, she called me from the basement. She didn't come up. She called me. From our own basement. "Did you take the last of the wine?" I was still sitting in the driveway. Filing papers. Thinking about freezer teeth. "No," I said. But I did something else. There was a pause. A long one. I could almost hear her lips tighten. "What?" "I filed," I said. "Filed what?" "You know what. You're overreacting. You said that last month. You're being dramatic. You said that last week. Just think about it, okay?" "Not today," I said. Then I hung up. And for once, the silence felt like mine. The morning after I filed, she made pancakes. No explanation. No mention of the phone call. No reference to me saying I filed for divorce while sitting in the car with a half-eaten protein bar in my lap. Just pancakes. With banana slices on top and syrup from the fancy bottle we only used when her parents visited. She even hummed while cooking. Like nothing happened. Like everything hadn't happened. The house smelled like cinnamon, and I hated it. It was the kind of scent that begged you to forgive things. That clung to your clothes like nostalgia. It smelled like the early days, like Sunday mornings before she started locking the basement door. Before her eyes turned glassy when I spoke. Before I became a background noise in my own life. I sat across from her at the table, still half in shock. She served me like she always used to. Smile. Napkin. The whole illusion. But when she placed the plate down, I noticed something strange. Her phone was in her bra. Not her pocket. Not beside her. Inside her bra, screen inward, like she was hiding a detonator. That's when I realized she wasn't pretending everything was normal. She was playing a role, giving me a scene. And I was supposed to respond with something like, "Thanks, babe." I overreacted. But I didn't. I just looked at her chest, then at the pancakes, and asked, "Whose tooth is in the freezer?" She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She sat down, cut her own pancake, chewed it slowly, then said, "I told you not to go through my stuff." That's it. Not "what are you talking about?" Not "what tooth?" Just that. "I told you not to go through my stuff." I don't remember eating. I just remember sitting there while my food went cold and she carried on like she was in an ad for antidepressants. That afternoon, I tried to call my brother. No answer. Left a voicemail. I didn't even say what was wrong. Just said I missed him, which is code in our family for "I'm not okay." He didn't call back. I walked into the garage around 3 p.m., thinking maybe I'd fix something, tighten a screw, organize my old tool bench. I hadn't touched it in months. Everything smelled like dust and old rubber. There was a storage bin on the floor, unmarked, shoved behind some camping gear. Inside the bin were photos, but not ours. Printed photos. Glossy. Color corrected. Her. With a man I didn't recognize. In a hotel room. On a beach. At a restaurant I'd begged her to try for months. The one she said was too commercial. In every photo, she looked younger. Lighter. Like she'd put her soul in a carry-on bag and left me with the shell. And this man, I swear I'd seen him somewhere. Not in person. Online. Suddenly it clicked. I'd seen his face, blurred and distant, in the background of a selfie she took last summer. She told me it was during a school counselor retreat. She told me they bunked with other women. She told me not to be weird about it. But there he was. In full color now. Laughing with her like they shared private language. I didn't confront her. Again. I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more. So I waited. For that night. For Wednesday. Her me-time night in the basement. I watched her pour wine. Watched her change into her favorite silk robe, the one she never wore around me anymore. Watched her light the incense. Same ritual, same playlist. Then she locked the basement door from the inside, and I heard the dull thump of whatever speaker setup she had down there begin to pulse. I waited 30 minutes. Then I went outside. Around the side of the house. Quietly. There's a narrow, spiderweb-covered window at the back of the basement. No screen, old glass, never cleaned. I'd never once looked through it. Until that night. And what I saw, she was dancing. But not alone. There was a laptop on a table. Open, webcam light on. A man on screen, shirtless, with a guitar across his lap. He was singing to her. Something slow, Spanish maybe. I couldn't hear the words clearly, just the tone. Intimate, low, meant for someone who wasn't me. She twirled in the robe, laughing, holding her wine like a bride holds a bouquet. She looked radiant. She looked in love. I don't know how long I stood there. I didn't feel cold. Didn't feel angry. Just hollow. Like someone had scooped my insides out with an ice cream scoop and left me behind the window to watch myself rot. When I came back inside, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't break things. I printed a second copy of the divorce paperwork, put it on her pillow, and wrote one sentence at the top with a black Sharpie. You said not today, so I made it today. I slept in the car that night. Windows up. No music. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't miss her in it. The next morning, she didn't mention the divorce papers. She didn't even look surprised. She just moved them to the nightstand like they were junk mail, the kind that says urgent in red ink, but ends up under a coffee mug. I watched her pretend to fold laundry. I watched her place a pillow over the sharper written sentence like she was smothering a confession. You said not today, so I made it today. Nothing. Not a flinch. She offered me eggs. I declined. That's when I realized. She was already gone. Her body was just the guest who overstayed its welcome. I was living with the echo of a marriage, not the real thing. But even echoes hurt when you're trying to sleep. And still, I couldn't leave. I know how that sounds. Weak. Pathetic. I've read the comments on stories like this. Man up. Get out. She doesn't deserve you. But people forget, love is a slow poison. You don't notice it eating you until your bones feel hollow and your friends stop recognizing your voice. That day, I opened a new email account under a fake name. I used to mock people who did things like this, spying, creating fake profiles, playing detective in their own relationship. But when you feel your reality slipping, you start clawing at the walls. I made the account and sent her a message. Just a simple line. Hey, saw you on the stream last night. You were beautiful. It was bait. I had no idea if she'd respond. But she did. 10 minutes later. Thank you. Don't usually get messages like this from real accounts. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I wrote, you seemed happy. Really happy. She replied with a single emoji. A bittersweet smile. That cracked something inside me. Because she never used that emoji with me. Not once in all the years together. That small face on the screen felt more intimate than the past 2 months of silence. I didn't respond. I closed the laptop and just sat there, numb, disoriented, like a ghost inside my own body. That evening, my sister called. Out of nowhere. We hadn't spoken much since the funeral. Grief doesn't bring people together like the movies say it does. In real life, it isolates you. Everyone assumes everyone else is doing worse. So no one reaches out. But she called. Hey, I was going through Dad's storage stuff. Found something weird. That sentence alone nearly broke me. Weird how? Letters. Old ones. In a box labeled, "For Ned if she ever leaves." Written in his handwriting. My mouth went dry. He wrote them before he passed? I asked, not quite believing it. Yeah. From years ago. Like, way before you even got married. Wait, what? You need to come see this. So I did. That night, I drove out to her place, the old family house. The one Dad refused to sell even after his hands got too shaky to mow the lawn. It smelled like wood and ash and distant arguments. She handed me the box like it was a live grenade. Inside were 8 letters, all handwritten, each with a year on the envelope. The first one said, 2009, before the beginning. That was 2 years before I met Mara. I opened it, and what I read didn't make sense. Son, you don't know her yet, but you will. Her name will seem like home, but she'll burn it down behind you. This isn't madness. I've seen it before, in your grandfather's house, and in mine. There are people who love like a curse. Be careful. You'll think it's fate. It's not. It's math. A pattern. You'll ignore the signs. I did. Don't repeat me. I sat on her porch for an hour, rereading it under a yellow bug zapper lamp, wondering if my dead father had been some kind of prophet or if grief was making me hallucinate wisdom where there was only warning. Was he writing about her? How could he have known? Back home, I found her asleep on the couch, half-dressed, laptop still open. I picked it up quietly and looked at the screen. A paused video stream. Live chat replay running on the side. Someone named Tobias Grind had just tipped her $50. Message. Worth every second. You always make me forget my life. She was streaming. Performing. Not sexual. Not overt. But emotional. Some kind of late-night therapy circle meets intimacy club. I watched her face on the screen. Soft lighting. Close-up. Whispering affirmations to strangers who paid to feel seen. And the way she looked at the camera? That's the look she used to save for me. Now it had a price. I didn't wake her. I just printed the second letter, slipped it into her streaming notebook, and wrote one sentence beneath it. How long have you known my father better than I did? Then I went back to the car. This time, I brought a blanket. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not in the car, not even with the blanket. Just laid there watching condensation crawl down the windshield while her silhouette moved behind the curtains. She paced. Maybe she saw the letter I left in her notebook. Maybe she didn't. It didn't matter anymore. The house didn't feel like mine. It felt like a memory I hadn't earned the right to keep. The next morning, I didn't go inside. I drove to a coffee shop I hadn't been to in years. The same one I took her to on our first date. It used to have this lopsided wooden floor that creaked under your chair, and it always smelled like cinnamon bark and too many ideas. I sat near the window with the second letter from Dad, reading it for the 4th time, trying to figure out if he was losing his mind or if I was. This one was dated 2012, the year Mara and I met. It said, if she smiles and you feel guilty for enjoying it, that's not love. That's conditioning. If her sadness makes you apologize even when you've done nothing wrong, leave. These people don't break you with fists, they break you with mirrors. One day, you won't recognize yourself, and it'll feel like your fault. I stayed for 37 years. Don't you dare. I don't know how long I sat there holding that paper like it was breathing. Some part of me wanted to scream. Another part, the quieter one that always wins, just folded it back up and stared out the window at the rain. That's when I saw her car. Not Mara's. His. The man from the photos. The one from the beach, the hotel, the blurry background of her retreat selfie. I hadn't seen him in real life until now, but there was no mistaking the face. He got out of the passenger seat of a blue sedan and walked toward the entrance. Hoodie up, phone in hand. He didn't see me, didn't look around, just walked inside like he belonged to the world. And behind the wheel, Mara. She didn't park. She didn't come in. She just watched him go, then pulled away. I froze. Coffee went cold. Hands shaking again. I followed him with my eyes. He ordered something, sat down 2 tables behind me, and pulled out a laptop covered in stickers, band logos, something in German, and a torn barcode. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then I stood up and walked out. No confrontation. Not yet. I wasn't ready to know what I already knew. I needed answers, not rage. Back at the house, Mara was sitting on the floor of the living room, cross-legged like a child, surrounded by candles and pages torn from journals I hadn't seen before. Her hair was wet, not fresh out of the shower wet, more like she'd dunked her head under a faucet. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, from something else. Staring too long, not blinking enough. She didn't notice me at first. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. The room smelled like sandalwood and mold. A sickly mix that made me feel like I was standing inside someone else's grief. I looked at the pages. Handwritten thoughts, all in her looping cursive. Dozens of them, scattered like broken glass. I picked one up. I wonder how long I can fake being healed before I become the lie. Another said, the man upstairs doesn't see me anymore. That's fine. The ones on the screen do. She looked up then, her voice hoarse like she hadn't spoken aloud in days. Did you read all the letters? I didn't answer. I crouched beside her, not too close, and said quietly, how did you know my dad? She tilted her head, bird-like. Then she smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just sadly. He used to come to the stream. Before the dementia. I felt something cold slide through my chest. What stream? The one I do on Tuesdays. You thought it was Wednesdays, didn't you? That smile again. That quiet power play. Like she'd won a game I didn't even know I was playing. He used to leave long messages, she continued. Said he saw his marriage in my eyes. Said you wouldn't understand. My stomach dropped. You're lying. She stood up, barefoot, eyes dull. Am I? I stormed upstairs. Opened my laptop. Logged into the account I created to bait her. And there it was. Archived messages. From a user named Last Train East. That was Dad's old email handle. Dozens of messages. Long ones. Thoughtful. Poetic in a way I'd never heard him speak. Lines like, you remind me of the women we fear, but secretly build homes around. My son is already too far gone. I hope he finds you before it's too late. I didn't know whether to vomit or scream. That night, I locked the basement from the outside, just to see what she'd do. I watched from the hallway. She came upstairs slowly. Didn't knock. Didn't panic. Just stood there with a glass of wine in one hand, staring at the locked door like it was an old friend who'd finally said goodbye. Then she whispered to herself. Not loudly, not theatrically, just a single line, so soft I barely caught it. He said this would happen. I left the house again. Drove nowhere. Slept in a parking lot outside a gym I used to go to before I lost track of who I was. When I woke up, my phone had 13 missed calls. All from my sister. When I finally called my sister back, she answered like she hadn't slept. No greeting. Just silence, breathing. Then I went through more of his boxes. I didn't say anything. Just waited. There's something you need to see. But it's not going to make sense at first. It never does anymore. I drove back to the house. That same creaking porch, same chipped paint, same garden hose he always swore he'd replace. She handed me a manila envelope the moment I stepped inside, her hand trembling slightly. Inside, a photo. Black and white. Glossy. Studio style. Two people standing side by side. One of them was my father. Younger, early 20s, face still round, a military haircut, and that same hesitant smile I'd inherited. The other? Mara. But it couldn't be her. The hair was shorter. The clothes were different. The image was aged. She looked identical, but the photo had a timestamp printed in the corner. 1983. I stared at it like it might rewrite itself. No, I muttered. That's not possible. She wasn't even born then. But my sister was already walking across the room. She pulled out another photo. This one looked even older. A group shot. Mid-70s maybe. Same woman. Different setting. Again, same face. Same eyes. Always just off to the side of the frame. Never centered, like she wasn't supposed to be captured. She's in half a dozen of them, my sister said. Scattered across different boxes. Different years. Always next to him. Never labeled. You think he kept them by accident? I asked, my voice thin, brittle. He labeled everything, she said. Everything but her. I sat down on the edge of the couch, those awful floral cushions that never quite forgave your spine. My heart wasn't racing. It was doing something worse. It was slowing. My whole body felt like it was backing away from the truth, like it was trying to flee without moving. There's more, she said. She handed me a journal. Not one of Dad's. This one was bound in maroon leather, with corners that looked chewed. I opened it carefully. The handwriting wasn't his. It was hers. Page after page of Mara's handwriting. Dated. Labeled. And very, very old. Entries from 1991, 1987, 1975. Notes about people I'd never heard of. descriptions of hosts and vessels, warnings to herself, and a repeated phrase at the bottom of nearly every entry. Don't get attached. They always forget. And then I found it. A line that made my fingers go numb. Met a man today. Ned's father. Kind. A little lonely. We'll keep him at a distance. He's too perceptive. I dropped the journal. My sister caught it before it hit the floor. She was pale. I thought this was paranoia, she whispered. I thought maybe Dad was losing it. But now? Now I didn't know if I'd married a person or a story someone had been telling long before I was ever born. When I got back to the house, the one that used to be mine, she was already standing in the driveway, waiting for me, like she knew. She was barefoot, holding a wine glass in one hand and the second letter from my dad in the other. Her face was unreadable. I got out of the car slowly, unsure what version of her I was about to get. You saw the photos, I said. I did, she replied. You read the journal? She nodded. Who are you? She looked down at the driveway, her toes tracing small circles into the dust. Then she looked up, and her voice didn't sound like hers at all. I'm just the space people pour their grief into. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because deep down, something in me believed her. That night, I didn't sleep in the car. I slept in the old attic, on the pull-down mattress we used for guests we didn't like. I kept the light on, journal in my lap, every word burning a hole in my memory. Around 2:17 a.m., I heard the stairs creak. Soft, deliberate. She didn't knock, just stood outside the attic door. I didn't want this to happen, she said quietly through the wood. Not with you. You were supposed to be one of the ones who made it. What does that mean? I said, voice shaking. But she didn't answer. She just walked away. And I swear to God, for the next hour, I heard her humming through the vents. Not a song I knew. Not one I'd ever heard. Something older. Something slow. In the morning, I went into her streaming folder. She always saved backups, even when she forgot to clear her tabs. There was one labeled for Tobias only. Password protected. And the password? My father's full name. The file unlocked on the second try. I sat alone in the attic with the laptop balanced on a folded towel. The room was stale, heavy with dust and forgotten holidays. Outside, it had started to rain, and the sound of it hitting the roof above my head felt like some kind of countdown. The password worked, my father's full name, and the file inside the folder began to play without asking for permission. It wasn't a video. It wasn't a stream. It was a montage. Hundreds of still images, some blurred, some intimate, all stitched together by a slow piano loop that repeated every 30 seconds like a broken lullaby. The file was titled, The Ones Who Stayed. The first image was Mara sitting at a table in what looked like a 1970s diner, holding hands with a man whose face had been scribbled out with red ink. The second, her at a graveyard, standing over a headstone dated 1964. The third, her in what looked like a therapist's office, mid-sentence, eyes glassy, almost caught off guard by the camera. But the images kept going. More men. Dozens. Always alone with her. Always in places that felt like endings. Motels, empty parks, hospital corridors, rainy windows. And in each one, she looked exactly the same. No aging. No variation. Same hair. Same gaze. Same presence. Like time refused to touch her. I sat there paralyzed, watching as the faces changed but the pose remained. Her left hand always resting gently on a table, always angled slightly toward whoever was sitting across from her. In one photo, the man was visibly crying. In another, he was asleep. In another, he looked directly into the camera with such hollow eyes I had to look away. There were at least 100 men. And then I saw the one I wasn't ready for. My father. A grainy photo from what must have been a nursing home. He was frail, thinner than I remembered, sitting in a recliner by the window, sunlight falling across his legs. Mara was behind him, smiling, hands on his shoulders. Her eyes not looking at the camera, but at him. And not like a caretaker. Not like a friend. Like a witness. I couldn't breathe. I slammed the laptop shut and felt the urge to throw it across the room, but I didn't. I just sat there, back pressed against old insulation, rain tapping harder now, thunder rumbling in the distance like someone slowly dragging furniture across the sky. I felt nauseous. And small. And angry. But mostly, I felt stupid. Because every single sign had been there. Every red flag. Every moment she turned just slightly too quickly when I asked a question. Every time she said, not today, like it was a sacred phrase, like she didn't even realize she was saying it anymore. I'd convinced myself she was a mystery, but she was a pattern. That evening, I didn't pretend anymore. I didn't ask her where she was going. I didn't wait for the right time to talk. I went downstairs while she was setting up her next stream, walked straight to her makeshift set, and unplugged the light. The room went dim. She didn't flinch. She just looked at me, her face perfectly neutral, and said, "So you opened it." I didn't speak. I wanted to hear her lie. I needed to hear her lie, because if she lied, maybe this was still salvageable. Maybe I could tell myself I'd imagined everything. But she didn't. Instead, she sat on the edge of the couch, crossed one leg over the other, and looked at me like a teacher preparing to explain something a child wouldn't understand. "They always do," she said. "Eventually." "What are you?" I asked. "Nothing magical. Nothing mythic. Just practiced." "You knew my father." "I've known a lot of fathers." "You used me." I stayed longer than I was supposed to. The honesty in her voice shook me more than if she'd screamed. There was no anger, no justification, no spinning, just a quiet acceptance, like she wasn't defending herself, because she didn't need to. "Why?" I whispered. "Because you reminded me of one of the good ones." Before he turned. Turned into what? She looked at me for a long time before answering. Into someone who stopped asking questions. Later that night, I found the third letter from my father. It was buried inside a copy of Slaughterhouse-Five, tucked between 2 pages about time loops and fatalism. The envelope was thicker this time, the handwriting more erratic. It read, "If you're reading this, it means she stayed. And I'm sorry. She never stays this long. Not unless something went wrong. Maybe you broke her pattern. Maybe you reminded her of something she's trying to forget. Whatever it is, don't make the mistake I did. I tried to save her. That's how she wins. You don't fix her. You leave." He had written those words 10 years before he died. Long before the diagnosis. Long before the breakdown. He knew. And he stayed anyway. Just like I did. Just like I was still doing. I don't remember falling asleep that night. But I remember waking up. She was sitting at the foot of the bed. Still. Silent. Just watching me. When our eyes met, she smiled. The saddest smile I've ever seen. "You'll leave soon," she said. "But I just wanted to see how you looked while you still belonged to yourself." And then she stood, walked out, and closed the door behind her. I stayed frozen for nearly an hour. And I knew, deep in my gut, that if I followed her down that hallway, I'd never come back the same. I didn't leave the room for the rest of that night. I didn't pack. I didn't text anyone. I didn't drink, scream, or break things. I just sat in bed under the thin ceiling fan, arms crossed, mind racing in circles that never quite closed. She was somewhere in the house, the woman I married, or thought I did. Maybe she was waiting for me to make the next move. Maybe she wanted me to run. But I couldn't run yet. Not until I saw what was behind the door at the end of the hallway. The door we never opened. The one she always said was for storage. Old wires, broken equipment, winter coats. I'd believed her. Because people believe the ones they love, even when they shouldn't. Especially when they shouldn't. The house was silent except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of settling wood. I moved barefoot through the hallway, not breathing, heart trying to outrun itself. The door felt colder than it should have been. I touched the knob, expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. Inside was a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. It swayed slightly, even though the air was still. The room was small. Almost too small, like it had been carved out of space that didn't belong to this house. One chair. One table. One box. No windows. I opened the box. Inside were hundreds of small cassette tapes, labeled by year, decades worth. The earliest one I could find was marked 1961. The most recent was this year. Each had a name scrawled across the label. Men's names, all different. All first names. Some crossed out. Some underlined. One of them was mine. I picked it up, numb. Nedrick, 2019 to 2024. She had labeled the start year. I hadn't even realized that was the year we met. My hands shook as I turned the tape over. On the back, in faded black ink, she'd written a short phrase. "He tried to leave kindly." Whatever that meant, it made my chest cave in. I put the tape back in the box and scanned the rest. My father's name was there too. Same format. His had a different message, stayed too long. Forgot himself. That's when I realized what this was. This room wasn't for storage. It was a catalog. I wasn't the first. He wasn't the first. We were chapters. Trials. Data points. I stayed in that room until sunrise. I expected her to come looking for me. She didn't. Instead, I heard her footsteps above me around 6 a.m., heading to the attic. My old safe place. The one place I thought was still mine. I followed. She didn't close the door. She was sitting in the middle of the floor, legs crossed, holding my father's third letter in one hand and my printed divorce papers in the other. I thought you'd be gone by now, she said without turning around. I needed to see, I said. She didn't speak for a while. Then, you're not like the others. You keep saying that. Because it's true. They begged, bargained, blamed themselves. You just watched. Watched what? My failure. I almost asked her to explain, but I didn't need to. It was written across her posture. The slight hunch, the trembling fingers, the way she clutched paper like it could keep her tethered to reality. She didn't look supernatural. She didn't look dangerous. She looked tired. Were they all in love with you? I asked. Not at first, she said. But they made me into something worth worshipping. And then I took that away. I sat across from her. Why me? I asked. Why now? Why this? She didn't answer right away. She set the papers down gently beside her and looked me in the eye with the kind of expression I hadn't seen since the very first month we'd been together, when she was still vulnerable enough to look human. Because I wanted to see what happened if I stayed, she whispered. The air in the attic shifted. You mean you've never finished the story? Never watched someone choose to leave before they lost themselves? You're the first to open the door before the fire. I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry, and my mind felt detached, like I was floating above the moment. I filed the divorce papers, I said, quieter now. It's real. I know, she said. And I'm proud of you. That broke something in me. Because even now, even after everything, a small, pathetic part of me needed to hear that. That evening, I found her old burner phone in the drawer of the bathroom cabinet, behind a stack of unused candles and a wrapped bar of soap from a hotel we never visited. It was powered off, but when I charged it and opened the photo gallery, I wasn't surprised to find thousands of images. But not of me. Of them. Men of every age, from every decade. Screenshots of their texts, close-ups of their faces while they slept, receipts from restaurants I'd never heard of. She didn't delete anything. Not even voicemails. It was a digital graveyard. And in the middle of it all, a photo of us. One single photo. Me, asleep on the couch during our second year together, wrapped in a blanket, mouth slightly open, one hand on my chest. On the image, in faded script drawn by finger. Almost. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear. Out of understanding. Because now I knew. This had never been a love story. It was a study. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be understood. I wanted to be forgotten. I left on a Thursday morning. No dramatic speech. No suitcase flung into the trunk while the neighbors watched. I packed 3 bags quietly, took only what was mine, and left the divorce papers signed and notarized on the kitchen table under her favorite mug. The one that said, "Introverts unite, separately, in our own homes." She wasn't home when I left. Or maybe she was and didn't come out. I didn't check. There was nothing left to say. I didn't leave because I hated her. I didn't leave because I needed revenge. I left because I wanted to hear my own thoughts again. Because I wanted to laugh at something stupid and not feel her watching me like I'd betrayed some invisible rule. Because I missed music. I missed quiet mornings. I missed myself. I drove west without a map. Literally. My phone was off. I stopped when I saw signs for a town I couldn't pronounce and checked into a motel that smelled like bleach and forgotten prayers. It was perfect. The clerk didn't ask questions. Just slid me a key and pointed to room 12. I unpacked nothing. Just lay on the unfamiliar bed and stared at the ceiling fan spinning in a crooked circle, and for the first time in years, the silence wasn't tense. It was clean. That night, I wrote in a cheap spiral notebook I bought at a gas station. I wrote for 3 hours straight. Pages and pages. Not about her. Not about my father. Not even about the tapes or the photos or the attic. I wrote about who I used to be. About who I still wanted to be. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't profound. But it was mine. Weeks passed. I stayed on the road. Never the same town twice. I found part-time work fixing old computers at a library in Montana. The pay was nothing, but the staff let me drink free coffee and use their break room couch when my back gave out. There was a woman there. Her name was Carla. She had laugh lines, gray streaks in her braid, and a tendency to hum while shelving books. She never asked about my past, and I never offered. We just existed near each other until it became normal. One night, we stayed late cleaning out a closet full of donated monitors. She asked me what I was running from. I told her, honestly, a version of myself that almost didn't make it. She nodded like she understood. Didn't ask for details. I liked that about her. About 3 months later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo. Mara, standing on a beach, alone, hair tied back, no makeup, eyes closed, head tilted toward the sun. On the back, she had written, "You made it out. That means I can, too." I stared at it for a long time. Then I set it in a drawer and never looked at it again. Not because I hated her, because I finally forgave her, and I didn't need to keep anything anymore. Today I live in a small cabin near the edge of a lake that freezes over by mid-October. I chop my own firewood badly. I plant vegetables that die too soon. I take long walks without headphones. I let silence fill the cracks where noise used to live. I am not perfect, not healed, but I'm here. And sometimes, not always, I wake up with the kind of peace that doesn't need to be earned. And on those mornings, I whisper it softly to myself like a private joke. Not today.